bit better. Okay, now we are going to start our second session, and that is with our kids and 2 moms, and then 2 of our young adults. So if y'all can come to the stage, and we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to get started. First, we have Jennifer, which is the mom of Lillian and William, and Lily is here, and she is 11. She's in the 6th grade, and she's a very talented artist. I don't know if you've had a chance to see some of her artwork, but it is amazing. And her brother, William, is also here, and he has PKD, and he is 9. So Jennifer and Lily, go ahead.
Hello. I'm not going to speak for very long, so Lillian can share pretty much her story. I'm just going to give you a little background on our family. My name is Jennifer King. I live in Bono, Arkansas with my husband and our 4 children. We have 2 children with PKD, Lillian 11 and William 9. When Lillian was born in 2010, she needed a blood transfusion at birth. At that time, she was misdiagnosed with spherocytosis. In 2013, William was born and had more severe complications at birth and needed a double exchange transfusion. Then again, at 6 months old, William had another hemolytic crisis and was hospitalized for another blood transfusion. That is when their doctor felt that the diagnosis was not right. We were referred to a different hematologist at the Children's Hospital that immediately tested them for PKD. For a few years, Lillian and William's health had been easily monitored without any signs of complications or need for any more transfusions. But as they got older, their health conditions started to have major impact on their lives. Lillian's complications started when she was 5. She had serious secondary issues going on in her body from PKD, which ended up having her in need of an organ transplant by 9. William started struggling with his anemia at the age of 8 and is currently transfused every 8 weeks. So far, he still has a spleen, but we are aware that the discussion of removal is most likely in the near future. This condition and how it makes them feel from day to day is so unpredictable. Together, our family has learned how to adapt, adjust, change plans and schedules as needed to care for our children with PKD. We are blessed to have the help of family and friends that lend a hand when needed. No parent wants to see their child struggle with an illness. We want them to live long, happy lives without limitations on their dreams.
My name is Lillian King. My brother and I were diagnosed with PKD at the age of 2 and 4. I am not transfusion dependent, but I have had many blood transfusions throughout my life. It has been a constant challenge for me and my doctors to keep my body healthy. I have been in the hospital many times for testing, procedures, surgeries, finding illnesses, liver transplant, and liver rejections. I was 5 when my health started to get really bad. I turned yellow and had stomach pain a lot. I was tired and sick all the time. My doctors told me I was having blockages and would needed surgeries to help remove them. I had many ERCP procedures to remove the blockages, but they just kept happening often. At 7, my gallbladder was removed, but the sludge and stones continued to build up in my bile ducts. When I was 8, my doctor said my liver was so damaged I would need a new one. I was placed on the transplant list February of 2020. 2 months after my 9th birthday, I received my new liver that summer in July. Soon after the transplant, I needed another blood transfusion, My spleen swelled up and needed to be removed a few weeks later. I still struggle daily with my health, and through my experiences, I've learned coping skills that make my hospital and doctor visits easier for me. I bring a bag full of art supplies, fidget toys, and other useful tools that help make my visit less stressful. I also carry written out step-by-step instructions on what things help me when I get stressed to hand to the nurses caring for me. My brother and I are usually at the hospital getting our treatments together. Since we have had the same condition, both of us understand how difficult a visit can be, and we both have anxiety when it comes to IV treatments, when one of us are unable to communicate our needs to the nurses, the other steps in and helps. We both help each other get through the rough times. Being sick a lot made it hard for me to stay in regular school. It was difficult to keep up with my classwork and make it through the entire school day. I found that going to school online relieved some of that stress and gave me the flexibility I needed to balance my education and daily health issues. Painting and sketching are my favorite things to do. I love art and hope to have a job in the art field when I grow up. My advice to others living with PKD is to stay strong and never give up on your dreams. Keep advocating and spreading awareness about our condition. Fight for the better treatment options that will give us a better quality of life and hopefully a cure one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer and Lily. I feel like Lily is unique. I don't know if there's other kids out there that have had an organ transplant. And I also love that Lily and William kind of have a plan of care that they give to their doctors and nurses that shows them kind of what helps them cope through this. So parents that have kids with PKD, if that's not something y'all are already implementing, that might be something smart to do just to help the nurses and doctors be able to have a more positive experience with giving the blood transfusions. Okay, our next speaker is Leah, and she is 21, living in Ireland, and she was diagnosed at 3 years of age, and she is currently practicing as a beauty therapist and a cosmetologist. And Leah actually has a sister, Amy, who is here, and she is 18, and she also has PKD. All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Leah O'Conner. I'm 21 years old and I'm from West Cork in Ireland. At 3 years old, I was diagnosed with PKD. As I was too young to remember a lot of my experiences and my diagnosis, I've had to ask my parents for their experience and how it affected them. On the 23rd of December 2000, I was born 3 weeks early and severely jaundiced. Straight away, my mother could tell there was something wrong. She had to fight to get any doctor to check me out, and eventually, with the help of a midwife, they finally agreed. The doctors discovered I had a heart murmur as well as an enlarged liver and spleen. I was then rushed to the neonatal unit, and the next time my mother saw me, I was hooked to every kind of monitor with tubes and wires. She was told I had a hemoglobin of 7, and the following day I had my first blood transfusion, and at 3 days old, I had a platelet transfusion through a vein in my head. This was the beginning of a very long, scary journey for my family. After 11 days in the ICU, I was sent home with no answers and no diagnosis. Just weekly visits to the city hospital, which is a 3-hour round trip from our home, and I was transfused every 3 weeks. They were told at this stage they might never get a proper diagnosis. I had a port fitted, which didn't always work due to a kink in the line, so many more bad veins had to be accessed. At this age, I was quite a menace, and on many occasions, I'd pull the butterfly needle out, sometimes while we were in traffic, and sometimes I would pull it out and hand it to my aunt while she was shopping. This caused a lot of more stress for my parents, and eventually the nurses put a stop to it by bandaging up my hands to stop me pulling at it. Finally, in 2004, I was diagnosed with PKD after my hemoglobin dropped to 5. The doctors didn't give much more information, as I doubt they knew much about it themselves, but at least they finally had a name. My mother bought a computer so that she could look up the meanings of all these words doctors would throw at her. Not long after my diagnosis, my parents were given the option of a splenectomy or chelation treatment as my iron levels were rising. They chose the splenectomy as they were told this would put a stop to my transfusion dependency. Again, because I couldn't let my family rest, I ripped out all my paper stitches and placed them in a neat pile on my aunt's living room floor. But at least my transfusion dependency was over. Later in 2004, my sister Amy was born. Amy was also born with PKD, and while my parents had an idea of what to expect, Amy was a lot sicker than I was. Born 5 weeks early, Amy was severely jaundiced and was close to needing a full exchange transfusion. While my transfusion journey was ending, Amy's was only beginning. And Amy followed a similar routine to me and also had her splenectomy at 2.5 in Crumlin Children's Hospital in Dublin. Following Amy's splenectomy, I developed parvovirus and my hemoglobin dropped to 4. My parents, who had barely put their feet in the front door after a 6-hour journey back from Dublin with Amy, they had to turn around and rush me up to the hospital. They were told I needed an emergency transfusion, which terrified my mother, as she was afraid this would mean after 3 years, I'll be back to transfusion dependency. I spent about a week in hospital, which I don't remember much of, except for the brand new pink Nintendo DS my parents bought me, which kept me very entertained during my hospital stays. My mother is probably the one who needed a present to keep her entertained, as once I got out of hospital, Amy also developed parvovirus, and my mother spent a total of 4 consecutive weeks at the end of a hospital bed. Luckily, it wasn't a case that either of us ended up transfusion dependent. Over the years, we both have had our fair share of hospital stays. Both of us have suffered with gallstones and having our gallbladders removed, having struggled with excruciating menstrual pains and a considerable drop in my hemoglobin every month, which led to a few trips in the ambulance and a few units of blood over the years until 2020, when I had an IUD fitted, which has been a massive help, as well as developing numerous infections, which resulted in needing blood transfusions between tonsillitis, glandular fever, as well as a cancer scare, and mostly recently for myself, developing blood clots in my lungs. In July of this year, I developed what at the time I thought was just a nasty chest infection. I went to work as normal, but throughout the day, I had a severe pain in my chest, which at first I tried to ignore, but eventually it felt like every time I took a breath, there was a weight laying across my chest. I went to my GP, and she sent me home with an antibiotic and told me to monitor it. By the time I got from the doctor back home, I couldn't breathe at all. My mother rushed me to the local general hospital, only a short drive from the house. I spent a week as an inpatient and had a CT scan which showed I had numerous blood clots in both lungs. I was given 2 units of blood and was prescribed a blood thinner and sent me home. I was put on a waiting list to see a blood clot specialist and told to take the blood thinner until then. I'm still on a waiting list to see the specialist, and unfortunately, due to the highly underfunded healthcare system in Ireland, I expect to be waiting another 12 to 18 months at the very least before I get any sort of consultation. As for our day-to-day life, dealing with PKD, we are lucky that it has had little effect on how we live our life. While for most people, this all sounds very scary, and a lot of people over the years have questioned how we cope. But for myself and my family, this is all we know. We have never known any different. Although it can be frustrating and sometimes have been tough, we have never spent too long feeling sorry for ourselves. We have been lucky that we have been able to go to school every day. I have finished college and have a full-time job working as a beauty therapist, and Amy has just started her first year at college. We don't allow it to affect our social life either. We have dealt with our illness considerably well and have a unique sense of humor that makes the constant drama a bit more bearable. For us, probably the most frustrating thing about having PKD is not really having any resources or support for us. We had never met anyone else with PKD, and most doctors we have met over the years don't even know what they're dealing with. So we really didn't know anything about PKD up until we joined the Facebook group a few months ago. We are delighted to get the opportunity to come here today and meet you all. We are finally getting some answers to some questions we have had for nearly 22 years, and for the first time ever meeting people that have had similar experiences to us. So for that, we thank you.
Thank you, Leah. When doing the Zoom sessions with all the panelists and speakers, I got to, hear a little bit more in depth of the story. And then I got to talk to Leah's mom, Bernie, and it was fascinating because anyone that has ever had blood clots or pulmonary embolisms, there's so many times that there's no symptoms. And so you don't really know. And kind of like her general practitioner sent her home just with an antibiotic thinking it was bad. But Bernie, talking to her, she said she knew that Leah was really sick. And as soon as Leah got home, she rushed her to the hospital. And, if it weren't for Bernie, Leah may not be here because that's how quick pulmonary embolisms can go bad, I guess. And then just in Ireland with the healthcare there, Leah doesn't even know if her pulmonary embolisms, her blood clots in her lungs have even dissolved, which is scary because she cannot get an appointment with a blood clot specialist. So it's not something that is easy to endure with PKD and then having to deal with blood clots. So thank you, Leah. Okay, next is Jessica and Travis. So Jessica is a mom of 3 from New Hampshire, and her oldest is Travis, and Travis is 15. He's a freshman, and he was diagnosed with PKD at 6 months of age. And they kind of have a unique treatment that's unlike any of ones that you've heard today. So go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jessica, and this is my son, Travis. We live in New Hampshire and have also lived in Massachusetts and Rhode Island throughout the last 15 years. Travis was born on September 22nd, 2007, and we knew something was wrong within a few hours of birth when Travis was severely jaundiced. He spent the first 11 days in the NICU and received his first transfusion at 9 days old. Doctors first thought he may have G6PD, but they were not convinced when looking at our family lineage. He was really a puzzle to the entire staff. When he was discharged from the hospital, he was monitored closely by his primary care doctor, who was in constant communication with the pediatric hematology team at Tufts Medical Center in Boston. His first visit with his hematologist was at about 2 months old. Dr. Rosenfield thought she knew what he had because she was treating another patient with the same rare condition. Travis's official diagnosis for PKD was when he was 6 months old. He had a hemolytic crisis 4 months post-transfusion, and a clean sample of his blood was sent to Stanford University. Travis had his first portacath placed when he was 8 months old, and at this time we began regular transfusions every 4 to 5 weeks. At 5.5 years old, he had a splenectomy before starting school. It was at that time that we stopped his transfusions and moved to maintenance checkups with hematology. His ferritin spiked when we stopped transfusions, and he was placed on JADNU for iron chelation. After attending the Agios Patient Caretaker Advisory Board in January of 2015, I began discussing with his team of doctors restarting transfusions to minimize the secondary conditions associated with PKD. We decided to return to transfusions when he was about 7.5 years old in 2015, and within several months, we began discussing changing to exchange blood transfusions. Apheresis was suggested to remove only the red blood cells from his body and return his plasma and white blood cells with new donor red blood cells. Within a few months of restarting transfusions, we began attempting the exchange transfusions and found that his current port was not sufficient to deal with the high flow of exchange. We scheduled to have his original port removed and replaced with a high flow dual port around 9 years old. Travis is going to continue his story now.
As my mom said, my name is Travis. I'm 15 years old and I've had PKD my entire life. I don't know what life is like to not have PKD, but I don't feel as though my life would be much different than it is now if I didn't have PKD. I get very good treatment and it works. I don't even think about the fact that I have PKD that much. Yeah, I have it and stuff. It affects me. No doubt about that. That's why I get red blood cell exchange transfusions. But it just doesn't feel like I have PKD. I feel normal. To continue from where my mom left off, just before turning 9, I had my 8-year-old single lumen port replaced with a double lumen port to make the exchange transfusion easier. We moved to New Hampshire a few months later, and I continued to receive red blood cell exchange transfusions at Dartmouth Health in Lebanon, New Hampshire. When we started the exchange transfusions, they were performed every 4 weeks, and I received 5 units of blood. The volume is determined by my weight and a target hemoglobin. As I grew, we increased the length of time between each visit, and the volume of red blood cells is adjusted when needed, especially after a growth spurt. We increased from 4 to 6 weeks, and we realized that 6 weeks was too long for me at the time. We adjusted to every 5 weeks, then from 5 to 6, and about 6 months ago, we increased from 6 to 8-week intervals. My healthcare team continues to monitor my growth and increase the number of units received to make sure I'm reaching my target hemoglobin. Currently, I received 9 units of blood during each transfusion, and we recently discontinued pre-meds. To be honest, I don't even see PKD as a negative. I'm good friends with my nurses and doctors, so I just have a good time and talk and stuff while I get the transfusion done. I should also mention that I got my double lumen port removed because I outgrew it and chose not to replace the port. Now we do the transfusions peripherally, one 18-gauge needle in the crease of my left arm and an IV, usually in my right forearm, so that I can bend at least one arm. I don't have major side effects to getting exchange transfusions. The biggest side effect that affects me is that I'm most definitely tired after the procedure. Another quantitative side effect that we have noticed is a spike in potassium levels, known as hyperkalemia, which causes me to feel nauseous within a few hours of my completed transfusion. This is caused because of the increased potassium in stored red blood cells. This can vary depending on how old or fresh the donor blood is. Older blood is more likely to have higher potassium levels. My potassium levels return to normal within 24 hours, and Zofran is given post-transfusion to help control my nausea. For the first time in my life, my lab work is consistent and my ferritin is in the normal range. For the future, I would like to see a broader standard of care normalized for the PKD community. All of us are affected differently, and I am proof that different types of care can and do work to minimize the side effects and secondary conditions associated with PKD.
Thank you, Jessica and Travis. Just hearing that treatment option with the blood exchange and not having iron build up and the iron overload and not having to go through iron chelation. I mean, gosh, I think that's a PKD dream for us patients. Okay, our last speaker is Lindsey, and she is 23 from Iowa. She's a dental hygienist, and she is currently engaged to be married. So let's hear Lindsey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsey Tompkins. I am 23 years old and from Sergeant Bluff, Iowa. I came to Orlando with my mom, Renee, dad, Marty, and fiance, Alex. After I was born, I was extremely jaundiced and was in the NICU. I was born and my blood was sent to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and Baylor University in Dallas, Texas. I had my first blood transfusion at the age of 2 months old. Due to being transfused at such a young age, donor blood was mixed with my own blood, making it a challenge for the doctors to diagnose me. It was suspected that I had PKD at the age of just a few months old. However, I was officially diagnosed with PKD at the age of 1. I received 9 blood transfusions during my first year of life, and I am dependent on them every 2 to 3 months now. My family doctor, who I have been seeing since the day I was born and he actually delivered me, orders my blood transfusions primarily on my symptoms. He has transfused me and allowed me to get my transfusions when I am presenting with my typical symptoms, such as frequent headaches and tiredness, or when my hemoglobin gets in the 7s or 8s. When I was younger, my body was able to tolerate the lower hemoglobin level better, but now that I am bigger and more active, lower levels take more of a toll on my body. On my 5th birthday, I was very ill with what turned out to be my gallbladder impacted with hemolytic gallstones. I still remember how much pain I was in, and I wasn't even able to eat my cupcakes, but there was no way I was going to let that stop my party. I woke up the next morning and was sent to the University of Iowa Hospital to have my gallbladder removed. After getting home from surgery, I was supposed to be on bed rest, but of course I was outside riding my new bicycle. During this time, my bone marrow shut down due to catching the parvovirus. My bone marrow stopped making new blood cells. The doctors did a bone marrow aspiration on the 5th day and saw that my body was finally making the new cells again. When I was younger, I had my hemoglobin checked a couple of times a week, and I saw a hematologist regularly. I thought that this was great because I got free pizza coupons each time I got my blood drawn. I have not seen a hematologist in years, but I am consistently seen by my family doctor. PKD has affected my life in several ways. When I was in school, I would get asked why my skin and eyes were yellow, which still affects me to this day. Although I struggle to keep up with my friends and I get tired very easily, I try not to let it hold me back from doing things. I have pushed myself in school, did cheerleading and soccer, participated in gym class, attempting to run the mile. I became a phlebotomist because I wanted to be the one poking people for a change. I did this at a busy hospital for about 3 years before it became too much on my body. I became a dental assistant, which is my current career and is much easier for me to keep up with. I went to concerts hours after receiving a blood transfusion, regardless of the nurse telling me I should be resting. I have traveled and seen new things, ensuring I schedule my fun activities after I get filled up with blood, so I am feeling my best. I have pushed myself to be the very best I can be because I don't let anything stop me. I refuse to let PKD restrain me from doing things I thrive to do. I suffer immensely from migraines and nausea, so I practically live off of Excedrin, sumatriptan, and Zofran. Living in the Midwest, I don't get much sunlight year-round, so my bilirubin levels are typically never lower than an 8 and can get as high as 11 or 12, which contributes to my nausea. I try my best to keep up with others, but PKD is something that affects me every day. I have had the best support system, and I don't know where I would be without my family or my incredible doctor. As a 23-year-old who recently got engaged, I have thought a lot about starting a family one day and how that will affect me. I am hopeful to have children in the future, but anxious to see how my body will handle it. I was incredibly fortunate enough to find a guy who has always been supportive of my lifestyle and is willing to take on this crazy journey with me, knowing that this may not be the easiest thing in the world. I have, as well as many others, experienced numerous obstacles, but PKD has made me stronger. It put life into perspective for me, and I know that I can persevere through anything. I hope to continue learning new things from research, hematologists, and everyone in the group.
Thank you, Lindsey. I remember after hearing Lindsey's story, I wrote down as she was talking, resilient. Like, man, even from when she was 5 and having her gallbladder removed and then coming back and being outside to ride that bicycle that she got for her birthday, to even as an adult, not letting things get her down and going to concerts after just getting tanked up with blood. So that's inspiring to all of y'all. We're going to open the floor to question and answers. So if anybody has questions, feel free to ask this panel. We have a microphone. Rob's about to bring you one.
Well, it's not a question. No, it will be tough growing up. It'll be tough as you get older, but all of you show that, the mental awareness of what you have and the strength and the perseverance to get through it. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there's not anyone else, feel free to approach these parents and kids after we finish, and they'll be happy to talk to you further about any of their treatment options or journey. Okay, thank y'all very much. I appreciate it.